Diarmuid Connolly won't see one dicky bird of game time. In how many games are left? 4. Not a hope of it.
The GAA Hour is sponsored by Paddy Power. Money back as a free bet on any championship match on live TV. If you're losing, first goal scorer bet gets a goal.
I'm not finished yet. It took me a long time to get here.
So Kerry broke their Mayo hoodoo by hammering them. They hadn't beaten them since 2009. There was 8 games, 4 wins, 4 draws. Or 4 losses and 4 draws. So, they definitely took advantage of the home advantage, which is massive, let's be honest. They had a huge Kerry crowd and, it was real championship stuff. And the first 10 minutes, I suppose, was real championship stuff. And then Kerry just kind of took over. And it was a bigger hammering than most of us could ever have predicted. The throw-in was brilliant drama, though, wasn't it? When you're watching that, you're like, Jesus, this is what it's all about. No one standing down from each other. O'Shea trying to intimidate more and having none of it. And it was like Clare Waterford. Do you remember years ago in 1998 where they took lumps out of each other just for the throw-in? Neither wanted to stand down, and it had that same feel about it.
Yeah, well, it did. Well, look, the gauntlet had been firmly thrown down to Kerry. That Mayo had bullied them in the league game and then bullied them in the league final. So I suppose their manhood was being questioned by a lot of people, and they were going to put on a big show anyway. They were going to peacock around there for the first while anyway. And in fairness to them, they brought all the intensity and the aggression to the game, and they got the reward from it.
Yeah, they definitely did. I want to talk about this pass from Clifford. So he obviously, I will talk about him in performance of the weekend, because this lad's just going to he's going to do things in his football career that we've never probably seen before on a consistent basis. We know what he did at minor. He's finding his feet now. The pass to Geaney was just beautiful. That was Messi-esque. That was, you're not really seeing that, are you?
No, you
just
don't.
he saw the angle Geaney was going at, and there was a chance to wrap his foot around it and stick it there. And the pass ran out of pace slightly for Geaney, or had slightly gone ahead of him. He couldn't quite get to it.
Yeah,
but
it was a great bit of vision and ingenuity, and it's the type of forward play that you saw for decades, in terms of an exciting bit of interplay where player with a bit of vision tries something, whereas we're so used to now looking at players meet a defender and they turn around and pass the ball backwards, and it's all about ball retention. You don't see that sort of stuff too often anymore, and that's why when you do see a bit of it, everybody gets totally over the top excited.
I think it was
about the perfect pass that was actually a yard ahead of him that he couldn't get to.
But I think it was because it was down along the ground. It looked like a soccer pass.
Yeah,
there was a messy kind of pass too.
It looked
a bit like that.
It was a great bit of ingenuity from Clifford, and it shows the class of the man to have the vision, and then I suppose it's the courage of his own convictions as well to just say, well, I'm going to try this pass, because a lot of players maybe can see the pass, or they maybe could execute, or they could try it, but they always they're afraid to try things. And that's one thing about Clifford. He's playing with great confidence, and of course he is, because everybody's telling him he's the best player that ever played football. So if that doesn't give you confidence,
he's going to be. Yeah. He's going to be, barring injury. I think he will be. The free from the sideline, he just threw it up there like Phil Mickelson with a wedge, and just said, look, just has the control. He just threw it up there. And a lovely, because there's loads of camera angles, we've seen this, and he's just launched it up, let the wind take it, and it curled lovely back down, dropped over the bar. That's from the sideline. And you often see from that range, we saw Sean O'Shea, Maurice Fitzgerald go off the outside of the boot. Controlling that and getting that distance off the inside of your foot is very, very difficult to do.
That's what I couldn't believe, because normally you'd think you'd have to hack at it from that range. And he just wraps his big toe around it, and it just curves.
He just threw it up there. That's why.
20 yards out. Yeah, he threw it up there is the best way to put it. But and no, just so effortless. This man is I'm sorry, Cian, I know you don't want to get too excited just too early, but this man is going to be the greatest.
Yeah, we're starting with performance of the weekend here by the sounds of things.
Well, he's an exceptional player, incredible talent, and he's very exciting, and he's capable of the spectacular, and that's really why I follow Gaelic football. So it's to see players like Clifford strut his stuff and do it with the bit of style that he does it with as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. Donald Vaughan tried to dive for a penalty. Do you remember that? I think there could have been a goal on there, and he just thought, look, I'll take this contact and go down. Ended up with egg on his face, didn't get his penalty. Diarmuid O'Connor with a terrible lazy foul for Cillian O'Connor's penalty that was missed. It was a brilliant save by Shane Ryan. What's Diarmuid O'Connor doing there? He clearly pushed him. Just a blatant, petulant push. Now, I know the game was over, but I'd say Peter Keane will be having words with him about that.
Yeah, especially when you're coming in to try and make an impact. The team is going well. Adrian Spillane had a good game. He was actually lucky he didn't get a black card in the first half when he was on for Spillane, because he took Aidan O'Shea out off the ball.
The ref watching it, like
yeah,
from 2
it
yards.
was a strange one that he got away with that. The referee just had his eye on the ball, obviously, and didn't see it. But no, he didn't impress. And to think that both Adrian Spillane and himself were ahead of Jack Barry in the pecking order, I'd say Jack Barry might come back into the reckoning now after
Jack
that
Barry
performance.
played himself out of the reckoning.
He did.
Spillane, I thought, played very well.
Spillane had a very good game.
Very good game. He's a real warrior, battler sort of fella, where you know what you're going to get out of. Now, he should be banned from shooting, because that's not his forte. Like, they were 2 terrible efforts. Aidan O'Shea got up so high behind him at one stage, he got studs in the back of the head, so he had the old bandage, and that kind of adds into this warrior, and he did well on Aidan O'Shea, and it was a huge mismatch to leave. We'll talk about this when we analyse the game. David Moran on Vaughan, and then Spillane actually broke even with O'Shea, and it wasn't until the second half O'Shea went on Moran, and Mayo came back into it a bit. So some really strange decisions for Mayo to have allowed that to happen, for Moran to be able to dominate that first half like he did. Cork showed how it should be done against Dublin, is what I've written down here. I don't want to hear anybody talking about, they conceded 5 goals. I don't care. They were in that game with 10 minutes to go, and they should have been well up at half-time. And I don't know how Dublin do this, but I've seen them being outplayed by Mayo in the first half, and they get a goal or two to take all the shine off Mayo's good work. Cork, the same thing. Just terrible defending for Jack McCaffrey's goal. Jack McCaffrey, there's no goal on there. He hit the ground. There's 2-on-1. Like, that's a turnover if you're any good. Jack's allowed get back up, turn around and shoot from an impossible angle. Now, goal 1-1 to 4 points. It was 4-0. Yeah. They're Dublin just back. Ruined your good work. That's how they do it. I don't know how, they always do it. But Hurley missed a goal chance. Then you have the Jack McCaffrey terrible defending from him, and then you have the stupid goal to give away just before half time.
Sure, it was unbelievable. Like, Cork had played all the football and should have been about 10 points ahead, and they were probably
you would say conservatively they should have been 5 or 6 points ahead, and they had a lead then to defend, so they could maybe drop a body or two back, or you could stay going for it. Changes the game completely. But don't let anybody try to tell me that that's not how you beat Dublin. That's how Dublin will be beaten. It'll be beaten by David Clifford scoring 3-3. It'll be beaten by Kerry, somebody going for Dublin being a bit off form on a day. You won't beat Dublin by containing them. They've proved that. They've won 4 in a row based on it, outside of Mayo putting it up to them. So, Cork were able to get 117 against them and show Dublin up. Cian O'Sullivan doing mad stuff like dropping off Paul Kerrigan. What was he doing? Dublin are not invincible. They're invincible if you try to contain them. They're not invincible at the back at all. There's some brilliant players, but they can concede scores.
Absolutely. Well, they're no different to any other team that has played the game of football. They're just better at it than everyone else so far. But the formula remains the same. If you stand off any good team and good players and allow them to play football, they're going to beat you. Like, that's just the way it is. So you have to try and impose your will on the game. And we can talk about all the different tactical master plans that all these lads are coming up with, or kick-out strategies or anything, but the attitude of how you approach the game is number one, and that's, going out to try and attack the game as opposed to the containment
and philosophy. You need forwards up front, you need good interplay, and you need to hurt Dublin. Here's always the example I use on this is Jose Mourinho. When he took over at Real Madrid, he thought the solution against Barcelona, because it worked against Chelsea once, is to drop all his outfield players inside the penalty box, frustrate them, and you basically have Barcelona probing for a full 90 minutes, and over the course of 90 minutes they're going to get a goal and you've got nothing left then. It took them about 4 games of doing that and losing to actually go and press Barcelona way high up the field and actually turn them over, and now suddenly Real Madrid start beating Barcelona. It's not rocket science. If you offer a brilliant team and try to contain them and not try to beat them, you're trying to contain them and you're trying to hope. Dublin don't do hope. Dublin are going to beat you.
And actually, Cork's tactics indirectly affected the other end. So you always say, give Dublin the kick. So Dublin had the kick pass on, and what that did was it stretched the game. So when Dublin were attacking, they had less bodies forward. So Dublin either scored or put it wide, usually scored. But they didn't have enough men forward then to press.
To support,
so Cork got the kick out away all the time very quickly. I thought they would struggle with that, but because the game was so stretched, Cork got it out and then they went at them again.
Yeah, because Dublin have forward line. Howard is outstanding. I know Jack McCaffrey get the headlines. Jesus, he's some player. But they're dropping deep. You're right, Conan. And then if they're giving in the kick pass, number one, they don't have too much support up there. They have to try and beat a man one-on-one. And number two, if they kick it over, you've got a quick kick out because they're not back up.
And look, any time the game got slowed down where Cork were into a slow phase of play with lateral passing and Dublin had all their bodies back, they weren't able to get through.
No.
Very, very difficult. And it was the same when Meath played Dublin. When the game becomes you're taking your own short kick out, there is good defensively, if not better than Tyrone, in terms of defending in huge numbers. So it's very, very difficult to break that down. And also the conditioning of having to try and constantly bring the ball the length of the field through the hands with a running game. You will not beat Dublin doing that over 70, 80 minutes.
No, and Cork even did run out of gas. Their conditioning wouldn't have been anywhere near Dublin's.
And you couldn't expect it to be.
No, they're Division 3 team and they're only getting it right, but they definitely have loads to work on. Ronan McCarthy said what I really liked from the performance was the fact that we conceded a really poor goal before half-time. We're 6 down and the expectancy was that Dublin would pull away. Now, they did in the end, but a bit like the Kerry game, we didn't lie down and we came back and won a penalty. Got it back to 3 points, and it was game on. It was game on there. And I suppose Dublin got the 3 goals at the end, and there was no way it was the 13-point game. Dublin beating the handicap. It was just cruel because it wasn't that. It was a great contest. I was sorry that it didn't end up going up to it. Jim Gavin says after the game, sometimes Jim Gavin, he's a gas man, he says, I think we did well to limit Cork to 117. They're a very potent side. Claw Mosser again. Now, maybe I'm being a little bit harsh on him, but at the same time, it was a really good game, and genuinely, and I've said this on the show loads of times, I give Kerry the only chance of beating Dublin because they've the forwards to potentially, on their day. Now, 9 times out of 10, Dublin will beat Kerry, but there's a day Kerry will get goals, and they'll rattle Dublin, they'll get a lead, and Dublin might, you know what I mean? So Kerry need to hope that 1 time out of 10 is this year. You know what I mean? The others, I don't know. I think Dublin are probably at their ease with them. I want to talk about this David Goff penalty decision, lads, because I turned off Joe Brawley at half time because he'd do your head in. He used to tell us that he was in the gay pride with David Goff, which is completely irrelevant. And then he's talking about him being a great role model and all these things. And he was given David Goff credit for changing his mind. And Wheelo did as well. Now, I would look at it from a different point of view. He had to change his mind. It wasn't a penalty. Why did he give the penalty when it wasn't? He guessed. He saw Con fall and guessed. The only explanation, until his umpires started waving, he has to go into him. If he ignores them and gives a penalty for something that's not a penalty, there's war. I would give him no credit for going in and checking with his umpires. He had to. It wasn't a penalty. There wasn't even a grey area here. So he gave a penalty to Dublin, guessed it, but his instinct was to blow it. We know David Goff lives and works in Dublin. I don't think he should be getting any Dublin games. I don't think it's fair on Goff. I think Goff's a decent referee. I think he pulled O'Donovan very well for having a hold of Mannion's jersey. I thought he tried to weigh it up then and pull Cian O'Sullivan for what was absolutely innocuous. Like, that was not a foul. But I think he's under pressure for Dublin games to prove that he's not pro-Dublin potentially. But that I just can't comprehend how a referee would give a penalty other than the fact that when it's a 50-50, he's going to favour a Dublin decision.
Yeah, I do disagree with you. I would give him credit for changing his mind, like Joe Brawley was saying.
How could he not change his mind? He's just given a penalty for nothing.
But how many times
his umpires have told him, you've got this wrong. We've seen this.
Yeah, but and the referees always come out when they're talking in interviews. They have a split second to make a decision. So he made a decision, thought it was a penalty, and then took more information on board, and put his ego aside. Too many referees there would say, "Piss off, don't want to hear it. Shut your mouth. Get out."
I don't agree. They'd say that to a player, but they can't tell their own staff.
He can't tell his own father or his brother.
Yeah, no, but that's the truth. He can't. He can say that to I accept that, Conan, but he'll say to a manager or a player, go away. They'll have egos with them. He can't tell his own staff that he got
I think it's a case now with all the things that are going on and the referees being mic'd up and things like that. They are constantly taking information on board from linesmen, from umpires and different things like that. This is just another example of that. You regularly see where a referee has not seen an incident and his linesman gives him a shout, and he doesn't have to go over and talk to the linesman. He knows the linesman tells him, listen, there's something going on off the ball here, you need to go and have a word with the wing back and the wing forward, or you need to book the two of them, or whatever it is. And you know the referee hasn't seen what's going on. He's just gone over, booked the two of them, told them to cop on, and goes back on with the game. This is just another example of additional information.
Why didn't he just blow the whistle then, stop the play, and confer? Why was his instinct to give the penalty? It was not a penalty.
Well, obviously from the angle that he saw it from, he thought it was a penalty.
You can't give a penalty on thought. It might be. That's not how it works. You have to be sure.
It is how it works. Sure, a referee, referees make decisions all the time. He made a decision when his team told him you've made the wrong decision. He did the right thing. Referees make mistakes all the time in the same way that players do. What we should see here is this is positive in that the correct decision was reached in the end. It was a little bit of a funny one in that it was maybe to your eye very obvious that it wasn't a penalty in the first instance, and I'm sure if David Goff had the benefit of seeing it from a television camera point of view or seeing it on a replay, he'd know, of course
well,
it wasn't
you see,
a
if
penalty.
I'm not sure and I just see a player, if I was a referee and I just saw a player falling and I wasn't sure what happened, you can't give the penalty there. You can stop the play and maybe ask your umpire.
There's no doubt that he was sure it was a penalty, otherwise he wouldn't have blown the whistle and given
how
it.
can you be sure when it was clearly not? How could he be so sure?
But Woody, that's just a mistake.
He
That
guessed.
happens all the time.
But he guessed that it was a penalty.
Don't accept that he guessed. He
must have.
He
there
saw
was no
what he saw
contact.
from whatever angle he was from.
He saw
and he made an error, and the error of his ways was pointed out to him.
I don't know. Maybe I'm on the back of Goff and the Kevin McManaman thing and the fact he lives and works in Dublin, and I thought maybe... And listen, we know in Croke Park it's difficult for referees because we talked about this on one of the Thursday shows before, that there's been studies done with referees when... I think it was a study done with games in Anfield where a bunch of referees watched games with the volume down, and another bunch of referees watched games with the Anfield crowd turned up, and the referees with the Anfield crowd volume turned up gave more decisions to Liverpool than the other one. Like, it's crazy stuff.
Well,
this is just human nature. So maybe into the hill, the crowd cheer goes up.
No, and that's the home advantage Dublin had in their home fixture. So, next week in the neutral venue, they won't have that advantage.
Maybe I'm being harsh on Goff here. You've 2 against 1. You can kind of maybe win me over. I just don't think he should. If Goff had blown there, right, gone in and consulted, and then said no penalty, I would have said that's grand. My problem is that when it was so clearly not one and he gave one, that's my problem. And okay, he got it wrong, but he had to change his mind with the umpires.
Oh, yeah,
if the umpires hadn't been waving at him, that was a penalty.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
so I would give the umpires great credit there.
They deserve huge credit for getting
involved. For getting involved. Big news coming out of Dublin then, obviously, is Diarmuid Connolly has returned to the panel. Jim Gavin just... kind of dropped this into a Dublin TV interview where there'd be no follow-up questions or nothing else.
And he dropped his name in the middle of about 7 lads, so he was fourth in the list.
Yeah. So this was gas. I actually met my father on Sunday morning and he says, "Cheers, Connolly's back." I says, when did this happen? He says, "Have you not been looking at it?" I says, "No, I haven't since last night. I haven't been looking at my phone." This is grand. Connolly didn't get out to America. I think Jim Gavin is being a complete gent to Diarmuid Connolly here and is letting him back in. Diarmuid Connolly won't see one dicky bird of game time. How many games are left? 4. Not a hope of it. Like, you look at it, Diarmuid Connolly has turned down Dublin. How many times? He's tried to go to America. Now you're looking at him getting suspended, a suspension that 2 years ago, a suspension that Jim Gavin vehemently defended him on. And when he came back from that, he got 30 seconds against Tyrone and then came on in the half-time in the All-Ireland final. Now he's completely blanked Dublin squad for a year and a half. He's tried to go to America, hasn't got out, and now he's back in on the panel. There's an argument that could be said that he's a distraction at this stage, that he could be putting other players' noses out of joint to come in at this stage of the season. At this stage, the season's nearly done now. The work they've done so far, and he's coming in now. I think you could be seen as a distraction. I don't think he'll see any game time. I think Jim Gavin has done it out of being a very, very nice man and having time for Diarmuid.
Well, yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think it's very late in the day for him to be landing into the squad. It's too late.
Yeah.
He wanted to go to America. He had no interest in the county setup because if he did, he would have been involved. So look, who knows, unless he's sensational in training matches and he's so good in training games that everybody knows he has to play. But that can happen, but it'd be very difficult even to be away from the setup for this long, to just land back in after playing a bit of club football. I can't see it, to be honest.
No, I can't see him getting a minute, Conan. What do you think?
You're breaking my heart here, lads. Yeah, like I thought he might have, but then the Rory O'Carroll stuff this summer, I thought Rory O'Carroll might have been coming in a lot more than he has been, and he isn't. So I'd say Connolly's even further down that pecking order.
Well, he's taken effectively 2 years, almost 2 years away from the county setup. I mean, it's a long time to be away from that level of training and preparation, even though I'm sure he's obviously an exceptionally good athlete, but there's a big difference between playing training all the time, for club football and trying to peak at a certain time. Now, you could argue that he's going to be very fresh and maybe he'll zip around in a few training games and he'll add to their squad over this period. Look, the reality is Dublin will win next weekend and they're playing Tyrone in the last game in a dead rubber match. Jim Gavin could play a complete reserve outfit, a squad run out for everyone, and maybe Connolly plays in that.
Not a hope of it. Stop. Not a hope he will play. That's not Jim Gavin's style. Jim Gavin's all about the team. Connolly opted out of the team, and he's not going to be rewarded by getting game time ahead of other fellas.
It's a surprise actually that he's been brought back in.
I think Jim did it out of just having time for Diarmuid, and he's stuck in. We talked about he's stuck in Dublin now for the summer. The 5 in a row going on, couldn't get out to America. I think Jim just is doing him a turn here and letting him back in. I genuinely think he's nowhere near. The only way Connolly could get some game time, he won't even get into the 26. He might get into the 26 for the final, and with the view of bringing him on if they're 3 points down with 5 minutes to go. That's the only time. If Connolly's, it's a last throw of the dice. Other than that, he's not getting on the field. He's not. This is Dublin. They're not short of options.
But he is still thought of as an option that could help us out when we're in a bit of a sticky patch.
Only when your back is to the wall, and you know what I mean. That's managers do that sometimes. Like they'll make a point, but if they really need you, then
they'll use principles
you.
all go out the window.
Yeah. Oh, we're gone here. We're in trouble. Let's use him. But if that's not the case, then he won't get used. Meath are being praised for spirited display and still lost by 9 points. Now that wasn't a fair reflection. A bit like Cork, Cian. Andy McEntee is pretty happy about how his team performed. On 54 minutes, Dara Campion score got them a point ahead. And that's after being 5 points behind, and then they lost the remainder of the game 1-8 to a point.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one because they went a point ahead. Donegal won the next kick out, went down the field and got a score. Meath took a quick kick out and had possession. The referee made them go back and take it again. Donegal won the kick out, got a point. Meath took a quick kick out, had the ball away, were gone with it. Referee made them retake it. Donegal win the kick out, get another point.
You're joking.
So
why was it being retaken?
There was substitutes coming on, or there was somebody down injured the far end of the field.
RT cameras weren't up to speed with
it. You do miss that sometimes.
No, but look at it, and it's just Meath were struggling on their own kickouts for large parts of the game. So it was just at the crucial time of the game when Meath were starting to tire and the game was there. Those couple of scores really gave Donegal the extra bit of energy, and it was a little bit unlucky for Meath, but nonetheless Donegal were the superior team, even though Meath obviously made a right game of it for long periods, and if they had taken all the chances they created, they would have won the game. They missed Conlon hit the post with a goal opportunity, and then Donegal go down the field and get a score. So there was things like that. But that's the level now that Meath have put themselves into, playing against those standard of teams, and they can only benefit from the experience because a number of the players that Meath had playing were very, very young, 18, 19 and 20. So you would expect that there would be a level of improvement from Meath based on the experience of the game. But conditioning wise, Meath stood up to it pretty well. Right. Which was a positive thing. Probably faded a little bit at the end, but having said that, when you're 6 or 7 or 8 points down, you would kind of expect that. So Meath probably could have clipped a few more scores near the end of the game. They started trying to force goal opportunities a little bit too early.
So 9 points wasn't a fair reflection.
No,
I didn't actually. I
only
saw the highlights of this one. Did they go man for man on the Donegal kickouts? Because it's so obvious that that's not the thing to do. Donegal
as best they could, but to be honest with you, when they did press up and Patton went long, Michael Murphy was, he was on the move out in front because he plays in that central position. If he makes a move left or right, and Patton is so accurate, very hard to contest with him, and that gave Donegal a great platform. And then at times when Meath maybe did hold the zone, say it happened on a couple of occasions where one of the wing forwards maybe hold that position and the Donegal wing back would drop into a pocket and pick up an easy one. So very hard. Like Donegal just have it. They have a nice mix, and they have an excellent keeper in Patton. So Meath did reasonably well, but you probably need to do better on the opposition's kick out to keep yourself up. Keep the territorial advantage that you need, particularly when you're struggling on your own kickouts, as Meath were.
Yeah, you nearly have to go. You have to go zonal, but I do take your point. Then he'd probably tap it.
Yeah, he's just.
You
He's
need
just
to be
good
more
enough
aggressive.
to do it,
You need to be maybe more aggressive.
It'd be very interesting actually to see how they do against Mayo, because if Clark is in goals again for Mayo,
he won't be
again.
He won't be.
After the struggles he had on the kick out, I think it would be an opportunity for Meath.
Oh, definitely would be. I can't see him being retained. I thought Killian Sullivan's first point was a good one, because he's running away from goal and he used Ryan McHugh as almost a spring to help send him back in the other direction. There's nothing better than when that happens. Does it ever have happened to you when you actually get hit with a shoulder and it propels you in the direction you actually want to go in? So really, Ryan McHugh hitting him a shoulder going back that way, and he took the brunt of it as well. I thought it was a good one. And Paddy McBrearty's first point was criminal defending by Meath. Imagine allowing McBrearty run from one sideline almost to the other sideline, all on his left, and waiting for him to get into range. Like, how would somebody not be coming up the middle there and bang, hit McBrearty there and say welcome to the game, and that's it. He was almost crying out for a hit there, wasn't he, McBrearty?
He was. Look, McBrearty is, I suppose, he's so powerful and quick that everybody knows what he's going to do, but it's still quite difficult to stop.
Yeah. And he showed that he has a right foot too in the second half.
Brilliant score off his right peg in the second half. Yeah, absolutely. And that was kind of at an important time as well, that kind of pushed Donegal on.
Yeah. Roscommon lads, improvement, 18-point losers. Last year, only 4-point losers, and the handicap was 4 here. Anyone on the 4-point handicap would kill Colm McShane, who kicked 2 really bad wides at the end.
Missed a big goal chance as well that he should have put away.
Yeah, probably should have. But this was a good performance by Roscommon. Very good, or a good performance by Tyrone. Almost just a pure Tyrone performance. Got over it, and that was it. Anthony Cunningham said after the game, he said, we created 2 super goal chances. And their keeper made great saves. If they had gone in, and a couple of points that have gone in off the upright have come back into play, could have been a different story. I'll take the 2 points off the upright. They could have gone over. I'd say the 2 goals were only half chances. I don't think they were proper goal chances. Craig hit it straight at Niall Morgan, and I was looking at the replay of that, because Craig's usually accurate. The only place to hit it on target was at Morgan, because there was 2 defenders both sides. So that's only a half chance. That's hopeful. And then Enda Smith coming in along the end line.
Should have been a fist over, will he?
It should have been a penalty, because Frank Burns
was pushed
just pushed him straight in the back.
Yeah, he did.
If Enda Smith had not taken the shot, if he had taken another play, it would have been a blatant penalty.
Yeah.
Or even if he had taken one, now he probably would have overcarried, but if he took one more step, he would have got the blast in the back. An absolute stonewall penalty.
Yeah.
And you see defenders do that a lot, and Burns was doing it for the whole game. He got away with a number of them, whereas the player was shooting, he basically took them out of it. So I think Tyrone really got away with that one, and that was at an important point in the game. It would have been a huge lift for Roscommon.
It wasn't really a chance though, because I've often gone in
that tight angle was difficult.
And the only way you beat a goalie there is going low, and he might dive over it. He'll come out showing
through
his
legs or something.
Go through his legs, but going at his body, like he punted it right at Morgan. There was no way. Maybe go high and hope that the reaction, but you have to get a load of power on it like that. When you're coming in along the end line, you've almost no choice but to punt it. It's hard to get power on it, because you can't get the good extension of your leg, because you're being chased. You kind of have to keep the ball ahead of you and just kind of punt it on. So there weren't good goal chances. So I disagree with Anthony Cunningham there, but they were definitely well in the game and played some good football. Like Enda Smith pass to Murta was absolutely sensational. So they played. Cox was off form, missed 2 bad frees, and wasn't. When all your eggs are in the basket of Cox kind of performing, and had been to this point, when he doesn't perform, what happens? Murta was kind of did some good things, but was well held as well.
Yeah, Ronan McNamee deserves a big shout out for shutting him down.
Did well on Cox, yeah.
Year, and it's just like, when he's on his day, he's hard to get past.
Yeah, he definitely is.
I think it was also where it was a game where Cox's impact was nullified really by Colm Kavanagh as well. Like, there was a lot of occasions where Cox had it, and if he was 1-on-1, he's a strong enough player that even with McNamee, when he would have stepped inside, he would have felt the contact, and he would have driven through the tackle, as he's done in all the games this year, because he's not really a exceptionally pacey player, so he relies on his power to kind of bring the ball into the tackle, shrug the defender off and then get the shot away. But any time he did that, Kavanagh was right out on top of it, so that he knew if he tried to take it into McNamee, even if he shrugged him off, he was straight into Kavanagh and he would have overcarried. So that's where you see Kavanagh, the benefit of him for Tyrone.
Yeah.
At times now, whether they look, we know whether that's going to be double or not, it's a completely different story. But at the weekend, against everybody else, it's very, very effective.
And that's always my point, right? If you've got a 2-man inside forward line and you're depending on them, then you can't give the other team a sweeper, or else what's the point in it? You know what I mean? You really struggle to get to them. So you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Yes, you'll keep the score down, but these are your only hope. So you can't allow that to happen to them. You know, that kind of way. And that's why I was saying it with Cork against Dublin, to not give Dublin the sweeper, and they didn't for a while, but then they did, and Cian O'Sullivan had all sorts of decisions to make because Cork had put a scoring forward on him, and then that makes perfect sense. But anyways, I do think that you're right, that Colm Kavanagh kind of messed that up, and really Roscommon, if they're depending on those two lads, had to do something about Colm Kavanagh. You know what I mean? That had to be part of their plan, and it wasn't.
They just needed to change it up slightly themselves, to just give Tyrone something different to think about. I mean, it was only right at the very, very end of the game where Roscommon launched a couple of high balls in on top of the square.
Yeah, desperate ones.
Look, they are desperate, but that's something that can be a very effective thing if it's worked on appropriately. I mean, it's not a difficult kick from outside the 45 on the wing. Like, everybody has space on the wing. A ball can be worked from one sideline to the other, and generally players have loads of time in that position. It's not a difficult thing that you can work it to a late runner coming onto the ball for a diagonal crossfield.
But how long is Colm Kavanagh doing this role, lads, and we haven't seen anyone mark him? I can't comprehend it. I genuinely cannot comprehend it tactically, that you would allow them have him covering your two best inside forwards. How can you do it? Put someone on and make him mark them. It's so clearly obvious. But anyways, here's a strange one, lads. And this was in the Roscommon match. So did you notice this going on? So Coldrick blew Roscommon for a kick out, not going outside the D, right? And Cian Connell was on sideline duty, and he did great work as a sideline reporter. Coming from an ex-sideline reporter myself, this was top-notch sideline reporting from Cian. So Cian said that one of the dailies went over to McQuillan, who's the linesman, and he says they're at the same thing the other end. So Cian hears this being oversaid, that one of the dailies says to McQuillan. So the next kick out that Tyrone get, Niall Morgan goes short to Frank Burns. Frank Burns is exactly on the line that he's supposed to be on, but he's not inside it.
No.
And Coldrick blows a free. Coldrick didn't see it. Who gave the free?
McQuillan.
Yeah. Unbelievable stuff. I have to give Cian Connell brilliant credit, because he's right on top of that, and that's what you want from a sideline reporter. And I was just thinking, isn't that unbelievable that this fella, because he'd been told by one of the dailies to watch out for this, thought, right, well, here we go. And Burns was not inside.
Yeah.
This is shocking stuff from McQuillan.
It's so annoying, because we often sort of give out to players and managers and all their backroom team for being so loud and boisterous with officials, but it works. That aggression
Plant the
towards
seed, yeah.
I mean, just putting them under pressure, and it's not something that you want to endorse, but it works. And you see the club level all the time as well. The crowd with the most aggressive backroom team on the sideline put the referee under the most pressure.
That's Goff in front of Hill 16. I'll change your minds. If we get through the hour, I'll have the two of you, your minds change. One more thing, lads, before we move into part two, is this Tyrone, right? So this was pointed out to me on Twitter. So then I was wondering, I'm not going to go off somebody's say just on Twitter, but I'd been saying about Darren McCurry came off early against Cavan, and he'd scored 3 points from play. And my theory on this was that McCurry is a bit of a streak player. The game was won. He's on form. Mickey Hart took him off to mind him. So a lad said to me on Twitter, you got that wrong. McCurry had picked up a yellow card. Mickey Hart's new rule is that if you get a yellow card, you're coming off. Right? So that kind of made me think back to Mick O'Dwyer had this rule with Laois for a little while. And it was the greatest load of nonsense ever, because it only applied to certain players. It didn't apply to Tom Kelly or to Joe Higgins or anything. So you'd feel terribly hard done by if you're one of the lads. Now, he wanted improved discipline, but players don't go out trying to get yellow cards. These yellow cards happen, and they're just a part of the game. Nobody wants to get it, and I don't think this rule changes anyone getting a yellow card, because sometimes you get a yellow card, it's just an accident.
Yeah, for a mistime tackle.
A mistime tackle. So Brian Kennedy, who's getting an awful run of stuff between injuries and black cards, now he got a yellow and he's whipped off. He's whipped off after 29 minutes. Hugh Pat McGeary is taken off after 31 minutes because he was on a yellow card. Now, Ben McDonnell came on for Brian Kennedy. He got a yellow card and he came off after 51 minutes. Now you've used 3 subs because of this bullshit rule, right? Kieran McGeary came on for Hugh Pat. He got a yellow. He didn't come off. And Colm Kavanagh got a yellow after 5 minutes into second half and he didn't come off. Isn't this nonsense? Now, Sen and Connell mentioned this on the sideline, and he said the word coming from the Tyrone dugout is that it wasn't because of a yellow card, it was tactical. They said it wasn't. They're only going to say that. This is obvious. The first 3 yellow cards all came off.
Yeah, it was tactical. It means they can get more fouls when they take the boys of the yellow cards off.
Isn't it so self-defeating? Like you've 29 and 31 minutes. Now you're down to 4 remaining subs.
Like, look at it. I personally don't like any of those sort of rules that are set in stone, because they always tend to be a little bit ridiculous when you drill down into them. But there probably are certain players on every team that if they get a yellow card, they probably should be taken off.
Yeah, no, I'll accept
an
that.
accident waiting to happen.
I'll accept that. Now, there's some
but at
lads
inter-county level, there's very few of those lads.
There's some lads can get a yellow card, and you can see on the field this lad's losing his mind. You know that it's a petulant one, and he's after taking a hit, and the red mist has come down. The word would be, get this lad off there. You know that these are not examples of that at all. So, like, I mean, I don't know what Mickey Hart's doing, but against Dublin, you don't want to be using up your bench that early.
Yeah.
Like, there's no doubt about that.
Kevin Walsh is doing the same with Galway as well. Just you got a yellow card, you were coming off, and it's a caution, but like they're treating it as a black card. So essentially, you get a yellow card and you're off.
They're punishing themselves with black cards. That's a great. That's a great point that they actually all complain about. Yeah. Never thought about that, Conan. Excellent. Right, we'll leave it on that point. They're accepting yellows as blacks.
It's one way to get rid of the black card, isn't it?
All right, we'll be back in part 2. So Kerry 122, Mayo 15. Kerry gave Mayo a bit of a hammering, lads, and they gave them the hammering in the first half pretty much. That's where the game was lost for Mayo. They eased up a little bit in the second half, but like, I mean, the game was won. It was a hot day. They put so much effort into the first half. It was all about the destruction of the Mayo kick-out and the midfield domination. The midfield domination, as we all know from playing in the forward line and in the half-forward line especially, you dominate midfield. You're getting ball in your half-forward position. You're on the ball closer to goals. You're able to do some nice link-up play. You're not being stretched into your own half. The full forward line gets loads of ball. And there you go. There's very, very obvious analysis. You dominate midfield and you dominate it from kickouts. The opposition's under all sorts of pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. Strange matchup in the middle of the field, really, with Donald Vaughan and picking up David Moore.
Yeah.
And that was a complete mismatch aerially, and even Clark trying to put kickouts out on top of that.
Why was he doing that? Because I'll understand Vaughan. You go on Moran, but drag him to the wing, right? Get him out of there and let's stick them onto Aidan O'Shea on Spillane.
I think what Kerry do brilliantly is the press on the opposition kick out. When they have a chance to do it, they cover all of the zones and they cover them quite well.
Aggressively.
Yeah, quite aggressively. They leave a very tight kick out maybe to a corner back out on the 21 metre line at the sideline. That's probably the only real
they were nearly covering that yesterday.
But
they had 4 along the full
It's very
forward line.
dicey. Like it has to be a perfect kick. And to be fair to Clark, it's the facet of his game which has much improved, but it's still a facet that's behind the other top goalkeepers is his kickouts, and he has the one kind of go-to kickout, which is the curled in step to the corner back position, which he picked out Colm Boyle on a few occasions there. But once that was kind of covered off, he doesn't seem to be as comfortable opening up his body to go to the right wing as a right-footed kicker, and oftentimes when he does that, the kick-out is hanging too long. Even when he's kicking it across his body, the kick-out's still hanging too long. It's not drilled.
It's an old-fashioned one, yeah. It's David Moran's like cup of tea.
It's
a hanger, and it's
a real horrible one.
It's a Darrell O'Shea.
You're going to get cleaned out if the ball is hanging over your head. But look, Kerry did brilliantly on it. David Moran had a fantastic game, but not only on the kickouts. I know you'd probably come in and talk a bit more about them, but because David Moran was marking Donald Vaughan never really marked Moran in open play, because Vaughan kind of does his own thing, and against a lot of teams that's very effective because of his running power. I always felt it was more effective from a wing back position because he can mess up how a wing forward can play. But what it meant was that David Moran was able to link the play at his ease in the sort of from the half back line and midfield for Kerry, because he was never under any pressure getting possession.
Yeah.
Every time he got the ball, he had nobody pressing him from behind, which means that every single time he took possession, he could turn and face forward. And every time he got it, it was a kick past 20, 30 metres, which moved Kerry up the field, and it meant their half-forward line were able to hold that zone and link the play. And in fairness, when the full forward line came out to bridge the gap, they linked it really well. But Moran was the key. And it was only right at the very, very end of the game was the first time I could see that Aidan O'Shea followed him, like marked him tightly so that he couldn't take the ball and turned. And that's an absolute killer. If you're trying to press the opposition as a forward, if you just get a simple hand pass over your head to a midfielder who can then turn and play, your press is wasted. It's a waste of time, because unless everybody is doing it, it's pointless. So Mayo were kind of caught a little bit there, where they didn't drop deep enough out of possession from their own forward line, and their midfield, in that middle third of the field, there was no pressure on Kerry, and they were able to just play these lovely little kick passes in. So the intensity was off from Mayo, aside from their kick out malfunction as well.
It definitely was. And I'm going to brag a bit here and call my analysis last Thursday, where I said Clifford should stay inside in his own. The sweeper will have to cover him. And then, in fairness, I was dropping Paul Geaney, who was outstanding and played that role better than I thought he could. Then I had James O'Donoghue and Stephen O'Brien out in front. So the knock-on effect of the sweeper covering Clifford inside on his own, because the conservative analysis and tactics of sweepers is they'll always cover the closest lad into goals. Clifford is the huge name. So the two lads out in front have got free rein. And I was saying one isn't enough. Two is because, you know what I mean, there's too much ground to cover. That two is the way forward. And Geaney and James O'Donoghue got on a mountain of ball, because Stephen O'Brien and Sean O'Shea had to be marked, right? So they were letting off Gavin White maybe, and he was the one, whoever that they were freeing that up was the one marking Clifford.
Yeah.
So now you're nearly man on man all the time. The huge gap that we complained about with Kerry wasn't a huge gap, because they were dominating midfield. Stephen O'Brien wasn't dragged back too far. Stephen Conan didn't attack on him, so he was able to get all his ball in offensive positions. He caught a kick out clean as well. He was unbelievably good. A mismatch, like I said, with Conan. So all these things adding up to Kerry just completely dominating Mayo.
Yeah, and Stephen O'Brien in particular, just driving at them all the time. But what that did was just completely panicked Mayo, and players were getting dragged everywhere. And that just sort of seemed to encourage the rest of the Kerry attack to spark into life as well. So if there was a sweeper, O'Brien was driving straight at the Kerry goals or coming down the wing, and somebody was moving across, and then that little diagonal ball was on into Clifford down.
But they're so good with the diagonal ball. The actual sweeper was a waste of time in front of Clifford, because he was pointing one way, going another way, and the lads were just looking up and waiting for that run where the sweeper's covering, and Clifford's gone to side, the sweeper's not looking, and it was just ineffective on Clifford.
It's all well and good having a sweeper when the kick pass is coming from really deep in the field, because the sweeper can cover that ball in front and the forward has nowhere to go. Kerry, because they had the territory and were able to kind of do what they wanted in the middle third of the field, and because they were all able to break the Mayo tackle, they were all able to almost beat their own man one-on-one. And then when they stepped past their man, they were able to get a bit of time to see what was on. So there was able to be, all the kick passes that Kerry were playing in were coming from zones where they were able to get depth on the pass, which meant that the ball over the top was always on, the real dangerous ball. So the guys, the man marker on Clifford, he can't overcommit, otherwise Clifford's in for a goal. So that automatically frees up the forward a little bit, that he can go left and right, win it in front. And they're so good up front. And they were really sharp on the day, that they were taking ball on the half turn and it was gone over the bar before a Mayo defender would even get close enough to put a tackle.
The ball, and even the Sean O'Shea point, which was actually a wide, he was finding himself not foraging. You remember the league final, lads? Stephen O'Brien and Sean O'Shea were picking up balls in their half back line, carrying it aimlessly, having nowhere to kick it, because they're completely out of the game in the middle of the field. It was incredible. If you can't win your midfield when you're doing a heavy, really aggressive press, you're gone. Kerry are very dependent on winning that midfield battle.
And the one thing about them is they marked very, very tightly in their half back line. Paul Murphy really nullified Jason Doherty, made it very difficult for him to get in the game, and he's usually a really important link player for Mayo. Kevin McLaughlin was really well marked by Gavin Crowley. I think seemed to be picking
Crowley
him up a lot.
Crowley was
very
good.
Very tigerish, very tight. So Mayo, by contrast to Kerry, Mayo really had nobody who could get the ball and take on their man and beat them. They didn't really have that in their locker, whereas you had Stephen O'Brien was punching holes all over the place. Gavin White played at wing forward. He covered a lot of ground, and because Colin Boyle was trying to sweep for Mayo, he had a lot of freedom down that side as well. So Kerry kind of had them every way really at the weekend, you know, in terms of from the tactical point of view, from an individual battle point of view, and from just the intensity that they brought to the game.
Gavin White has that type of pace that's Jack McCaffrey-esque. Like, I still think he's a huge weapon as a wing back because he can drag a wing forward out of position, but maybe he doesn't have that defensive instinct that we're talking about, because you would have to say that the Kerry defence was outstanding. They had no full-time sweeper that I could see. They were kind of they were backing their defenders to beat lads out in races, and Jason Foley was much improved. Tyg Morley, we know he's very good. But what impressed me a lot in the first half was Kerry defenders. We talked about this. They're aimlessly going man for man and running around. They left their men to sniff out danger, right? So the examples of this were Tom O'Sullivan intercepted a ball to the full forward line that had nothing to do with him. He wasn't a sweeper. He'd left his man. Enright did it in front of the terrace. Who else did it as well? Crowley did it as well. So these are balls. These different players are intercepting into a full forward line, and they weren't full-time sweepers. They were leaving their men to actually snuff out danger, and that was something we've been critical of Kerry for, that they didn't have that defender's instinct where they were blindly following their own men and not actually thinking as a unit. Whereas I think that there was definitely a bit more evidence of Kerry defensively thinking as a unit, like Dublin do, communicating, you know what I mean? Dropping off when needed, covering off space, intercepting passes, all those things when there was no full-time sweeper, but they all acted like sweepers.
They took responsibility, and if they spotted the danger earlier, which is a big improvement. Now it could be down to the personnel, maybe the likes of Gavin Crowley, Shane Enright, who hadn't played much football, maybe they just have better defensive instincts than some of the guys that were being picked. And when you have the pace, say, you know, Jason Foley picking up Darren Cohen, like Foley has the legs on him, so when Kerry are pressing really high and they're putting pressure on the ball, it's having to come from a distance away. You're backing Foley to win that race, and you're simplifying the job for guys like him and the full back line, marking the key men. But like, you have Paul Murphy, who's a very intelligent footballer. Like, he's not going to just blindly follow Jason Doherty out to the corner flag if Doherty's no threat. Well, I wouldn't expect him to anyway. I think he's a better player than that. But you're right, like, that was one massive thing that Kerry improved upon. And maybe it was just the context of the game, and that they weren't under huge pressure themselves individually, that they weren't panicked. You know, sometimes they maybe when they play against Dublin, they'll be panicked one-on-one, that they won't be willing to leave their own man because they're too spooked. But if they play like that, in that kind of cohesive manner defensively, where they're, you know, like that, leaving their man if he's not in the danger zone and trying to work more as a group, I mean, they showed a hell of a lot at the weekend that we haven't seen from them in any of their matches up to now. You know, huge improvement from them. Hugely
impressive. Let's be honest, Kerry were hugely impressive against the Mayo team that have just hammered Galway. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, I mean, of course now the headlines with a lot of people will be Mayo will be gone. I don't think they're gone. I think they've a way back in here against, if they beat Meath, I think they'd give them every chance of beating Donegal at home, because there's a bit of history there, and that's almost like a local derby at this stage. They've been through so much that there'd be a huge hard hits in that game. So I wouldn't have Mayo ruled out of this yet at all. Durkin obviously was a massive loss. Whatever happened to him, because Conan wasn't able for O'Brien, and he would have been able for him, and that, like, O'Brien caused so much damage. Maybe leaving Harrison on Clifford all day was a bit of a strange one. I'm not sure maybe what the solution.
Tough one though. It's like, what is the solution there? He's their best marker.
Harrison's their best defender. I mean,
the ball he was getting, it's undefendable, isn't it?
I wouldn't be overly critical of Harrison. There wasn't a lot he could really do. I mean, he's marking Clifford, he's isolated a lot of the time, and there's fantastic delivery going in. I still think Harrison is an excellent defender. Like, I wouldn't be overly critical. He was really up against it.
He was, definitely. So, like, I mean, where do you put Mayo's performance down to? I think they were shell shocked. I don't think they expected that level. Like, it's almost Kerry's lives depended on this now, and Mayo were not at that pitch at all.
Do you think, was that 4 weeks in a row for Mayo in terms of matches? Look, and with the injuries they had, like, Kerry have had a 3-week lead into that.
Yeah, but there's also then that's hindsight stuff where
It is,
Mayo
but-
won, then Kerry were stale and Mayo
Well,
were match
look,
sharp.
I can only say from my own perspective, I'd much rather have a 3-week lead into a game to prepare for one match than to be playing week on week, because you don't know what will happen week to week.
Yeah,
with picking up different niggles, knocks, losing different players.
But Kerry didn't know they had Mayo. Kerry wouldn't have had 3 weeks to prepare
No,
for Mayo.
but from a physical perspective is
Right.
really what I'm talking about in terms of the recovery for Mayo from week to week. They just looked a little bit leaden-legged at the start of the game, and that's kind of, they came out the first couple of minutes, they looked like they were flying it. They got the first score, which was great, but
and that was a great move
after
too.
that they were just chasing shadows, and that's not really what we expect from Mayo. So that's why I'm just wondering, I suppose it possibly had a bit of an impact, like in terms of if Mayo can get a result next weekend against Meath, which they would be strong favourites to do so, then they have a week break before the final game. So as you say, like, you still couldn't rule Mayo out entirely. But if they put in another performance like they did against Kerry, then they have no chance. They need huge improvement.
They need huge improvement, and they probably can improve. Kerry had 4 wides all day. They scored 122 from 31 shots. They really were clinical. Like, this was impressive from Kerry. The funny thing was that there were 17 kickouts in the first half. Poor David Clark. Now, there is an argument to say that he could have come off at half time, because that was maybe a little bit slow from James Horan to say, this is malfunctioned badly, this is not working, get Hennelly out for the second half. Now, the game was gone at that stage. You don't know what the thinking was. Like, Lee Keegan came off. He was poor in the game, but they're maybe watching him too.
Yeah, but it's not even just the scoop of David Clark, where it hangs. It's how he telegraphs it. It's sort of, what side he's going, because he runs around the ball before he
can't
kicks
disguise it. He's no kick to the right. Keane's right. He's not, unless he runs around in a big...
Yeah, and I don't understand, like, when you're under pressure, like, the most obvious tactic is, where's the big man? Aidan O'Shea, let's just put it on top of him.
Yeah, but now Spillane fielded one early on O'Shea, and maybe that turned Clark off, because the next few went out this side and Moran started cleaning up.
I think, to be fair, I think Spillane probably had the height advantage on O'Shea, and I think that's the difference and the benefit of Rob Henley's kickouts versus Clark's. Clark's are hanging too long, and that would suit a taller player. If you have the Henley type kickout where it's a drilled ball with backspin on it, a player can make a move slightly left or right, and the ball gets there quick enough at an angle that say O'Shea, such a strong man, he can hold the player off and kind of take the ball almost in front of him.
I take your point. Now, I don't think Spillane's is bigger than O'Shea. I thought O'Shea was a bigger man than Spillane.
I think he has a couple of inches on it, but even taking Vaughan and Moran into it, then, Vaughan, a very mobile player, you would expect that if you were playing Vaughan, Mark and Moran on kickouts, you want Vaughan to be moving and you want to put the ball in front of him into his path.
Clark can't do that.
And Clark just, on the evidence of everything we've seen,
we know he can't do that.
He can't do it at that level with the tight gaps that you're going to have with the Kerry press.
But, like, outside of kickouts, he's a much better goalkeeper than
He's
Henley.
a phenomenal shot stopper.
Henley gets on the team ahead of him, which shows you just how poor or just how much better at kickouts Henley is seen to be. Even though Henley makes mistakes on his kickouts
even
too.
Distance as well, Wooly. Like, there are times in a game where you just, like, Mayo were getting absolutely massacred on their own kickout. They needed to get the ball to the Kerry 45 and fight for it up there, just to give their defenders even that 20-30 seconds of a reprieve to catch their breath, because
there was a slight breeze. I think he tried to drive some of those out, but they were the ones Moran caught. They were just landing maybe at the midfield, hanging too high against the wind, because there was a slight breeze going down that way.
But they need it more from O'Shea in open play as well, because he won, like, obviously there's so much dog work around the back, and that's important for them, but he got the ball, fisted it off, and seemed to stand there a lot then, whereas maybe he was tired, but they needed him sort of coming through the middle a bit more, and, like, he is their big player.
Physically, O'Shea looked to be struggling
and
the other day.
He was the same against Galway, lads. What's his name?
Peter Cook.
Peter Cook scored 4 off him. He didn't dominate that game. So that's 2 in a row now, O'Shea. And that shows his importance to Mayo, that when he's not firing, they don't look the same team at all, although they did do well against Galway. Peter Keane made a nice comment after this, lads. So, like, I mean, Peter Keane is, the yera. He doesn't say much, even his tone of voice after the game. You're never going to get copy out of him. But he says, we went out and beat Cork. there was an expectation going into the Cork game that we were going to hammer them all together. But we never had that expectation. Suddenly, when we didn't hammer them, after telling you we wouldn't hammer them, it was our fault because we were wrong. You can't be right and you can't be wrong. You have to be something. You can't be right and you can't be wrong, at the same time. You have to be something. So, like, Cork were much improved. So, like, this is the knee-jerk analysis. I saw a headline on the RTE website this morning. Apparently Joe Brawley must have said in the Sunday game last night, now that Mayo are gone. Do you know this analysis that something has to be? Kerry had no chance of winning.
You're either dead or alive.
You're either dead or you're dead or you're brilliant. That's kind of the way it is, isn't it? So now Kerry are going to be brilliant now until they go put in their next mediocre performance, maybe against Donegal, and they'll be gone then. It's gone.
Well, it's going to be a very interesting game against Donegal because Donegal, one-on-one defensively, you would have them ahead of most teams at the minute. They seem to have that, and look, they've nullified almost every opponent they've played so far this season.
Styles make fights. Mayo are almost absolutely a perfect fight for Kerry yesterday because of the way the
game went. Yeah.
The way the game went. Yeah. Okay. Listen, that's always time for in part 2. Lads, we'll be back with performance of the weekend. Paddy Power performance of the weekend, and there's no real thinking outside the box here, lads. This is a who's who of the talisman on the teams. This is the Super 8s, and this is where the big men stand up for their team, and on the evidence of this weekend, that's exactly what happened. So with Paddy McBrearty, Michael Murphy, David Clifford, Jack McCaffrey, Brian Howard, Stephen Cluxton, Colm McShane. There you go. You could have predicted these. All these done. These are the nominations.
Should be the show slogan. There's no real thinking outside the box here, lads.
I can't pull a rabbit out of a hat here. These are the big men on the team. Any man off the street could have come in and compiled this list. So McBrearty said,
well, we'll do the next thing for performance of the weekend. Who scored the most? We'll just give it to him.
Now for the league, I do a little bit of that. Who scored? You haven't seen the matches, so you're just going off.
What Laois hurler gets footballer of the week here?
If a defender scored, Willie has him in. Played well.
That's the old school one,
and he could have actually been playing wing forward for the league, and you haven't seen it. So this is what you have to deal with for that. But Paddy McBrearty scored 1-6, so he was outstanding. Funnily enough, he was critical of himself for his goal, which I thought was an incredible admission. My man, which was Gill, kamikaze defender, a bit like John Keane defending. I think these lads, I've marked John Keane, and he got the better of me, there's no doubt, clearly. He committed for everything. Like, he never gave me a second to go, well, here's a nice handy one I'll get into my chest and turn around. Every ball was contested with him, and it pissed me off. It's like, he's getting up beside me. There's no relaxation. There's no catch of a breath. And maybe McGill is a bit like that. Like, he's out to get everything. Now, the whole game through John Keane, I was thinking, Jesus, if I get him a split second, he's going to commit and win. You know what I mean? And I couldn't get a good ball kind of to actually get at that split. He's committing, and this is what happened, Gill. And he's a brilliant defender as well, and I don't know, there's a kamikaze element to it, because for example Matty Ford hit John Keane for 4 from play the game before. Do you know what I mean? So there's a player maybe you can't be doing this on, and McBrearty is the man. It's okay to do it on me. Do you get my point? But McGill did commit to that, and McBrearty shrugged him off that slight bit, but he says my man probably committed to the ball a little bit too much and left the ball behind him. I didn't make things easy on myself. I probably didn't give myself a good enough angle. I wouldn't be happy with the finish, but now listen, they all count. It was a fantastic finish. Now maybe he thinks he should have straightened up a bit more to give himself a better angle, but Jesus, I wouldn't have had much. The finish was outstanding, no?
It was fairly emphatic, but sometimes I understand where he's coming from. I'd say what happened there was he didn't really mean to hit it that high. He didn't like the strike on it. I'd say he probably went to go across the goalkeeper, maybe lower.
Low.
And he probably skied it, and it went into the net and it looked good, but he's probably thinking, I got away with that one. That wasn't what I meant to do.
Some admission though at the same time, isn't it?
It is. Well, look, it's easy to say that when you win and you score 1-6. Isn't it?
Fair enough. Okay, so Paddy McBrearty is...
There's a lot of less honesty when you lose a game.
Well, that's true, yeah. But and actually, oh Jesus, now that I remember it, Conor Cox went for one off the outside of the left on the end line like he did in the Connacht final.
Oh, yeah.
And he missed it. Incredible stuff. So that debate is well over at this stage now. Jeez, yeah, I completely forgot about that. I should have had it down. I'm just after remembering.
So it was a pass then, is that what you're saying?
It was absolutely went for it. Right, so Michael Murphy, 3 points from play, kick out option. Jesus, how are Meath falling for the tap down to Ryan McHugh? That's going on since Dublin in 2014.
Yeah, they got 2 of them. Like,
in the lead up, 1 second, Joe, but in the lead up to it, McHugh is just walking around guilty as sin, you know, like, I mean, his head is down. It's like, how much more? And I think he had put his hand up. And then he walked around with his head down, like, you know, completely wrecked. There's nothing happening here. I'm not involved in any move. I'm wrecked. I've no chance. And then he's gone like a bloody light. Like, Jesus, like, I mean, Meath shouldn't be falling for that. But Murphy is so important from all kick-outs. Like, I think the debate of playing him inside with McBrearty's form and Brennan's form is probably over now. And Gallen coming in, that he's nearly too important from these kick-outs to be putting him inside.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I would always have been an advocate that he wasn't doing enough around the middle of the field. But I think because they now have a better midfield, you know, with McGee and McFadden in there, it takes a bit more of the pressure off him. So he does tend to spend more of his time in the attacking zone than he has in previous seasons. But having said that, he's still a brilliant option with the length that Patton has in his kickouts, you know, on their own kickout. But they're going a long distance. Like, he's receiving them past midfield almost every time. So, look, he's a huge weapon for them. Like, there's no doubt about it.
There's no doubt.
There's very hard to handle.
There's not much more you can say about Michael Murphy. But geez, Patton's such a slip of a fella. He's some kick out. Isn't it mad that kicking's just all technique? It doesn't matter your size. Like golfers, small golfers can still drive it all. It's all technique. Don't know how lads do it. So David Clifford, we've pretty much covered him. 7 points in total, 5 from play. Destroyed Kerry throughout. One slight critique I'd have of him is that he could be a little bit more ruthless. The point is on sometimes. Maybe he's trying to develop a goal and he might take it on that little bit too much and get bottled up. Is that a bit unfair? That the point is on, just take it. Maybe he's just sniffing to see is there a bit more on, and then maybe Harrison had got hand on him a couple of times and he had to turn back.
On that, yeah. And there was one particular occasion which I thought was hilarious. You know, Clifford got inside and he completely butchered the scoring opportunity, and somehow the ball rebounded to him. He kicked it over the bar, and Darragh Maloney was proclaiming him as a genius.
That was thinking, one. He was definitely on the sniff for a goal there.
Yeah, he was.
But there was another one in the first half on his left from that side, and he could have swung it over, but he chose to come inside or whatever, and he ended up having to recycle it, even though it's obviously hard to comprehend.
You're right. Like, if he could just tidy it up a bit, he could be a decent player.
Jack McCaffrey, lads, we've lasted the whole show without even mentioning Jack. One of the best games I've ever seen him playing, and really, really important for Dublin. When the game wasn't going their way in the first half, he was the only one constantly probing. Conor Callaghan was very good as well. But he was constantly punching holes, took the game to Cork, scored the goal, even though I do think the goal was terrible defending and unacceptable at intercounty level to have a fella boxed off like that and allow a goal to be in. But he'd a hand in all of the goals, I think Jack did. He gave in the ball for the Michael Diarmuid Connolly, which is pretty much a slam dunk. You know, we were saying that some of them are thrown or it's in your hand for a split second. This wasn't anyways. He was just ballooned it into the net. That was great to see, actually. The aggression in it. But anyways, McCaffrey, I don't know how you defend against him. It's almost in the modern game now where the wing forwards are back working. You're giving Jack McCaffrey free roam to get ahead of steam and go at you. He almost has to be man-marked, lads. He has to be watched constantly. You can't drop off him thinking, oh, well, I'm doing my team a favour by getting back here, plugging up a hole. That's no good. You're flat-footed looking at Jack coming at you and you're not catching him then.
Yeah, Christ, how do you man-mark him though? I wouldn't want to chase him for 70 metres down. That would be a pointless man-marking job.
Yeah. Do what Dublin did and just stay watching him, but have 5 yards on him goal side. Yeah, you know what I mean? That when he wants to join the play, you do those body checks. You probably have to do that. Be cynical against him.
The thought of him picking up the ball though worries me, because I don't want to be too close to him, and then he'd obviously burn you, but then if you're too far away, you'll just get enough head of steam that he'll go past you anyway. So I really don't know how you deal with it. And even his goal, I sort of give him a bit of credit because he was off the ground so fast there. I know he went down and there's 2 people, but by the time they even stopped running, their momentum stopped them, he was up and he shot. So he didn't really give them much chance to get hands on him and keep him down there.
Yeah, you give him credit for getting up quick, but there's no way if you hit the ground in that zone, it has to be a turnover and a possession. It had to be swallowed up.
But yeah, McCaffrey, he's a freak. He's a freak. Yeah. It's just almost impossible to handle. Really, you're calling for strength and numbers there to try and crowd him out. That's it. Yeah. That's all you can kind of do.
That's all. Brian Howard, lads, I thought this lad was unbelievable. When Dublin needed kick-out options, he's winning them. His ability to break through a tackle is incredible. He's like a bull. You don't dispossess him and he goes past. And it's a bit like David Moran like this. He's so not interested in the person that's tackling him. He's still looking to see what's on ahead as he's shrugging, he's shrugging you off. And Moran's the best ever at this. We've laughed about this on the show before. Like, Moran could have a lad hanging out of him and he's just still looking up the field to see what's going on. Howard's a bit like that, and he's become a huge leader. Like, I mean, a brilliant player. And against Cork, who were pretty much pushing up man for man, he was constantly able to get past his man then and cause problems.
Yeah, it's his best performance of the season. Back to some of the form that we saw from him last year. Look, he's an excellent all-rounder.
His sidestep is brilliant too.
Sidestep is excellent, but there's a collection of them there. But what Howard has probably above, say, even the like a Scully, who's a lovely player and links it well, and he had a good game too. Howard just has that extra bit of power.
Yeah,
that real sort of strength and physicality to go for kickouts and be in that middle third, and he can kind of play really anywhere. You can play him anywhere in that middle 8 and he'll do an excellent job for you.
He'll do an excellent job. Scully's actually still a bit of a slip of a fella. It just shows that whatever strength and conditioning they're doing, Scully is naturally a slip of a fella, and it's not like they've gone to him, we're going to get your arms big and we're going to get your legs big. I think Dublin do strength and conditioning better than everybody else.
They absolutely do.
Suited for everybody. Yeah.
Suited for everybody's body type. I think it's individualised.
Some ground in a game.
He does. He's a graceful player too, isn't he?
He is, yeah. Look, and he took his goal. I mean, the goal that he scored was just brilliant. I mean, it was just what I love to see as a forward. Like Con O'Callaghan really going for the goal, sidestepping, beating 3 men in a 5-yard space, and then slipping it to Scully, who then with a lovely little sidestep and just buries it. I mean, it's just pure class that other teams just. But there's rare that you have teams that have that quality, and that's why Dublin are just so far ahead at the minute. Yeah,
they definitely are. Stephen Cluxton deserves a mention here, lads. He had a great save from Hurley in the first half, which was very important. Now, Hurley should have thrown that across. It was a little bit selfish from him, and he had to be more aware of who was across the goals. And it's hard to beat Cluxton in a one-on-one like that. Like, Cluxton is very good, and going along the ground is actually not the way to beat Cluxton. Going high is almost the way to beat Cluxton, because Cluxton, like Premier League goalkeepers, falls back and leaves his you know what I mean? He's making himself big low, whereas I think drive it to the roof of the net will beat Cluxton quicker than trying to wriggle it along the ground.
The one thing that he does quite well is the timing of his move off his line, which narrows the angle down hugely. Like, a lot of the time you have players and they just get too close, and he's just right out on their boot, which is exactly what you'd expect him to be doing, but he does it really, really well. And the speed at which he moves forward off his line means that the attacker, unless they take the shot, like, to me, if you're coming in on Cluxton, the shot has to go early before he has a time to narrow the angle, because he's not really that tall of a goalkeeper.
And you saw Mulligan's goal, the famous goal, like he just blasted that, and Cluxton's kind of fought. Now that went off, he kind of sliced that by mistake, but remember Tyrone scoring a couple of high goals. I think he's more vulnerable to a high goal than he is actually to a low goal. It's a weird one.
It's the early shot that's going to
maybe the early shot, yeah, before he has set, because he does so much work probably on setting himself. And who was it? Neville Southall told me before in my previous job that David De Gea saves a lot of goals with his feet, and that's actually very poor technique for a goalkeeper, that they're actually supposed to be able to get down and knock it away with their hands or something. I was thinking it's a weird one. The easiest save ever is just your foot. You can actually stay standing. Five-a-side, yeah. You don't ever have to hurt yourself by diving at all. But anyways, that's I usually don't tend to analyse goalkeepers having a clue what I'm talking about. Colm McShane is the last nomination, lads. He got 5 frees. And I'm in two minds now whether Tyrone will ever go back to the system that they lost to Donegal and beat Dublin in the league. I think if they play Dublin, they might go back to it only because Colm McShane has given them that extra danger that they never had up there, that can win his own ball, get a score out of nothing, get a possession a bit further up the field. So I'm thinking Mickey Hart's going, this is our game plan from now on against anyone except for Dublin. I really think that's his going to be his plan. We won't see Matty Donnelly because he was too good out the field as well. We won't see any of that. The only time we'll see it is if Dublin play Tyrone, and I think Tyrone won't do it against Dublin in Super 8s. I think when you see Dublin, Tyrone, Super 8s, Tyrone have to play silly beggars in that game.
Yeah.
Now I'm not going to preview that game now, even though it's tempting.
The difference is that over the last 2 years they've had Mark Bradley and Lee Brennan inside on their own, and they had 3 men marking them, so the ball was never really on, but they were doing that role to keep 3 men on them, so everybody else had a bit of space. now Cal McShane genuinely is an option, even with 3 men on him. Like, so they can still kick it and play the way they were playing, and obviously when he's getting the ball, he's making things happen. So I think Mickey Hart might be thinking we're just even better than what we were last year.
Do you think there's a danger that he'll say, well, we play Dublin, now we have McShane who's a wrecking ball, we're going to stick with this?
I think so.
You think so? Yeah, I have a feeling he might too. You know, that's just the nature of Mickey Hart. Anyways, listen, we can't get into that. Whose performance of the weekend? It's down, lads, between David Clifford and Jack McCaffrey, and I'm finding it very difficult to choose a winner here. It's not easy to choose a winner. I'll be accused of Dublin bias if I go for Clifford. Okay, David Clifford. There you go. I never worried about Dublin bias. Even though Jack McCaffrey, one of my favourite players in the game, he was outstanding. I think Clifford just outshone him yesterday in just pure brilliance and class right throughout the game, even though, like I said, Jack McCaffrey was the next on the list. Right, David Clifford, congratulations. It's not the only time, I'm sure, for the rest of the year I'm going to be saying congratulations, you've got a pair of Paddy Power Lucky Pants. Right, that's it from us. We'll be back on Thursday with preview round 2 of the Super 8. Talk to you then. Good luck.